Well, every time I think things in the gaming world can't get even more insane, I am proven wrong yet again. Hello, my gaming brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming, and I appreciate you tuning in for another episode of QuickBird News, where we cover all the video game news from the past week that is fit to cover. This week's episode is going to focus on November 30th to the 6th of December. It's already in December, man. This year has flown by. It hasn't been a super busy gaming news week, but we have a few stories to talk about, including the ambitions of CD Projekt Red with the Witcher franchise. A little bit of interesting news there. We have the folks over at Arrowhead that are still doing good work on behalf of the players with Helldivers 2. And we have a well-known and respected game developer who's come out of semi-retirement to start working on games again, and we'll talk about all that. As always, if you go down in the description box, all of the news stories are indicated by timestamp, so you can jump ahead to a story that really interests you. Before we get to all that, though, we have got to talk about this merger between Warner Brothers and Netflix, or I guess rather Netflix buying Warner Brothers, and what it's going to mean for the gaming industry. And I think the real takeaway at this point is nobody knows. But let's get into it. Okay, we're going to start with this article from Video Games Chronicle, which came out on Friday, the 5th of December. And this is all very new news because this news was just finalized and released on Friday. But the title here says, Netflix has agreed to buy Warner Brothers, including game developers behind Mortal Kombat and Hogwarts Legacy. If approved, Netflix will own Rocksteady, TT Games, and more. And it says Netflix has agreed to a deal to acquire the film and streaming businesses of Warner Brothers Discovery, which includes its video game arm. And this was announced for the staggering tune of $83 billion. It's interesting watching for the last couple of years. We see this. We just saw a couple weeks back EA being bought out by the Saudis and a consortium of other group for, I think it was $55 billion. You had Activision Blizzard being purchased by Microsoft recently for a double digit in the $1 billion range. I think it was $50 or $60 billion. A lot of money being thrown at the video game space right now. Okay, the article says Warner Brothers owns IPs such as Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and the DC Universe. It also owns video game developers like Mortal Kombat's NetherRealm Studios, Batman Arkham creator Rocksteady, Hogwarts Legacy Avalanche, and Lego game studio TT Games. One thing that's left off this list is it also owned, before it shut it down earlier this year, Monolith Studios, which produced the Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, and Shadow of War games, and was working on the Wonder Woman game. We're going to come back to that in a second, because I believe Warner Brothers also has the broad rights to some Lord of the Rings properties. Lord of the Rings is one of those weird ones where there's a division, because things are, some people own some things and not other things. Anyway, they say that U.S. competition regulator is likely to get involved before the deal closes. Regulatory agencies, because of antitrust things, are going to get involved. As I understand it, all this article doesn't talk about it because it's not game related. As I understand it, Warner Brothers Discovery, which is the arm that owns media networks like CNN and TNT and HGTV, that is not coming as part of this deal. That's going separate. And it's going to be formed under a new independent company, which I believe is going to be called Discovery. So that's all going to, all of that media is going to go, but all of these IPs and the entertainment side are going to Netflix. And this article further talks a little bit about Netflix, about how this acquisition will improve our offering, accelerate, blah, 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 blah. And it says it's not clear what this deal could mean for Warner Brothers Games businesses, and Friday's announcement makes no mention of it. Netflix has made a muted push into the video game space for years, hiring experienced talent and pushing playable games to its Netflix app. So far, the game experience has been smaller, mobile-style titles rather than console-style blockbusters. And that is very true. When you look at the games that Netflix has put out, it is mostly mobile-type games. And the ones that are on computer, on PC, like one we'll cover here in just a minute, kind of appear to be mobile-type games, as the mobile-ish games, even though they're played on a desktop. So this is kind of interesting, because you have Netflix getting into this space, they're going to own all these IPs and all these game franchises, and they really have no broad success or experience running this. Now, it's not to say they couldn't hire the right people and get this done, but will they, is the question. And I think a lot of this remains to be seen. Now, in other places, they say that this is not going to take place. This is not an immediate shift over. It's not immediately happening. It's going to take another year because they have to divest properties. Like I said, the media parts are going to go, and they've got to work out all these details. So I think they're saying this could be a year or 18 months before this is officially happens. But what we're going to see is we're going to see these games move. And like I said, Netflix doesn't have a great track record with games so far. They don't really have any track record outside their mobile games. I'll go over here to this gamesindustry.biz article, which was actually put out on Thursday on the 4th. It preceded this news by one day. And it said Netflix is selling Spry Fox back to the studio's founders. That's according to GameFile, which reports that co-founders Dave Edery and Daniel Cook will once again own the studio, etc. Spry Fox is a game or a studio that makes cozy games. They made one called Cozy Grove, which has about, it has a very positive rating, about 7,000 reviews on Steam. So it's getting some play, but from what it looks like a game where you have to kind of log in every day and do your daily missions, and it's essentially a mobile style game, even though it's on desktop. And this article talks a little bit about what's going on with the studio, but that's not, to me, what's really pertinent. I get down to the bottom of this article where it says Netflix acquired Spry Fox in 2022, back when the streaming giant was making a big move into the game space. The studio was the fourth acquisition in 14 months and its sixth internal studio. They've since changed their approach. They closed down California-based AAA studio Team Blue while jobs were cut at Night School Studios, which the company acquired in 2021. So that right there shows you they've done like a lot of companies like Embrace or like Microsoft, where they've gone out and they've bought a whole bunch of studios, a whole bunch of IPs, and they mismanage it or they can't recoup their cost, so they end up cutting it, shutting things down, etc. In fact, that's what Warner Brothers has done with some of their studios too. They buy them and they shut them down. So what do I think this is going to mean in the long run? This, like I said, this is very early, so it's kind of too early to tell. I think that this could go one of two ways, and I think it's really going to depend on who Netflix wants to put in charge of this. I said one of two ways. I think one of three ways. They can put the suits in charge of it, which means the games we're going to get out of these IPs in the future are going to be mobile-ish style games loaded with microtransactions, which are designed to help them recoup their cost out of this. Now, obviously, the 83 billion, not 55, 83 billion wasn't just the video game industry. It involved all these properties. And, you're obviously going to see some changes to DC Comics and the DC universe. Who knows what we're going to see for Harry Potter? They're getting ready to do a Harry Potter reboot on HBO Max. Yeah, HBO Max came with Warner Brothers, and that's also now under Netflix. So HBO streaming services, HBO Max, will probably get merged with Netflix at some point, much the way Hulu did with Disney, and HBO Max may cease to exist as a separate streaming service. You're probably going to see more Warner Brothers. More Harry Potter, more Game of Thrones type of series being greenlit to try and recoup some of this cost that they can put on Netflix. And you're probably going to see more DC. You're probably going to see another reboot of the DC Extended Universe on film, and probably a mirroring, at least to start. I would not be surprised if you don't see a mirroring on Netflix as what you saw on Disney Plus with Marvel shows. You're going to see more DC shows that try to plug into an extended universe, and just because so far the way that the whole DCEU has been handled, it's been trying to copy the success of the MCU, or at least the early days of the success of the MCU, and rather than set their own tone, they've just never quite done that. And I don't think the Superman movie, while I don't know if it lost money earlier this year, I don't think it was a huge success for them. So they need to try something different, but I'm afraid they're not going to do that. If they put the people in charge of money in charge, they're just going to try and get returns. If they put the Netflix creatives in charge at least of the gaming sector, I don't think it's going to go anywhere either, because I think what you're going to see is kind of the same things you see on Netflix. You're going to see, and the same thing you see in a lot of other gaming industries where, to quote the Joker, it's not about the money, it's about sending a message. And you're going to start seeing more messaging in games. Netflix has a lot of people with very strong liberal political opinions working for them. They don't win every time, because obviously people like Dave Chappelle get on in spite of that, and some of his controversial statements have ruffled feathers, and the money people have won and insisted on it because it made Netflix money. But they're going to win some battles, and I can only imagine what that's going to do to a franchise like Harry Potter. It's going to be interesting to see how that is affected in this. Hogwarts Legacy was just about the only successful thing Warner Brothers has done in the last couple of years. I think Mortal Kombat did okay, but it wasn't a blockbuster. Mortal Kombat 1, the last game, was it 1? I think so. Hogwarts Legacy sold something like 25 million copies or 35 million. I can't remember. It was a lot. And they were greenlit a second one. Now, how is that going to be affected? If they decide to, thumb their nose at J.K. Rowling and load it with identity politics, if they do that in lieu of, advancing the gameplay, it's probably not going to do as well. Just saying. Whether you think that's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, at the end of the day, if they can't make money off of this franchise, it's just going to hurt Netflix in the end. And games that tend to do that tend not to do as well. We could go off on a tangent on this, but I think that's a problem. Now, the third thing they can do is they can hire some people that actually know what they're doing in the video game industry. People that target, an intersection between making good games and making profitable games. And if that happens, Netflix could come out of this okay, and we could get some games. We could see some games come out. I tease myself with the possibility that even though Monolith has been shut down, the fact that the Nemesis system is out there that was used in Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, which is a great concept for a game, and I understand they were going to use it in Wonder Woman before it got canceled. There's a possibility that under new leadership that could be resurrected, or for crying out loud, even just licensed out, because it's a patented algorithm, licensed out for other people to use, because it really did. I played Shadow of Mordor this year, and it really did add a lot to the gameplay. It added a lot of dimension to it. So that's a possibility. If they put people who know video games in charge, they could come out of this okay. But they're going to have to hire them from outside, because there's nobody at Netflix that knows what the hell they're doing as far as games go. Yeah, they can make mobile games that they may make some money off of, but that's not the same thing as making AAA games and having the same broad appeal. So they're going to have to hire from external sources. And, it's funny. Me being a Nebraska football fan, they didn't have a great football season this year, and they've fired some of their coaches and are looking to replace some of them. And you come to the conclusion that, let's say, in the college athletic ranks, there's a finite number of truly elite coaches. And I think the same thing, and Nebraska's finding that, and they're trying to fill some of these positions. And I think that's the same case in the video game industry. You start getting into this, there's a finite number of people who really understand both how to appeal to players and how to make the game sustainable. And the more that they get dragged from the other side, from the suits and from, the people that look at entertainment media as their own personal, political posturing, blog, the more they get the drag from that, the harder it's going to be for those people to work. I think that's what Netflix needs to do, though. They need to go out there. They need to hire somebody who oversees this, who really knows what the hell they're doing when it comes to video games. Now, will they? I don't know. And I don't think we're going to know. I think this is a story we're going to have to watch and see how it develops over the next year. But this is big news. This is big gaming news. Like I said, it's not all negative. I do see the possibility I saw somebody said that maybe they will look at reviving Wonder Woman as part of a DC a DC Universe push. They will look at reviving that game. Maybe they'd reform Monolith and let them put out more Middle Earth type games. So there are some possibilities here. I'm not trying to say this is going to be fully negative. It's really just going to depend on what Netflix does, and they are marching into unexplored territory here. So future's wild. So, as they say, buckle in and we'll see what happens. Okay, I cannot believe I talked about Netflix and Warner Brothers for like 14 minutes. Sorry for putting you all through that. I'll try and hit the rest of this week's stories kind of quickly and get through this. And I'm going to start with this Eurogamer article from Monday, the 1st of December. A whole new Witcher trilogy of games released within 6 years of each other. Is that even possible? CD Projekt Red has reaffirmed plans to release an entirely new trilogy of Witcher games within 6 years. Joint Studio CEO Michael Nowakowski told investors as much during a recent financial call. In a way, yes, I do believe further games should be delivered in a shorter time period, which is actually a great attitude if they can do it. As stated before, our plan is still to launch the whole trilogy in a 6-year period. So yes, that would mean we would have shorter development time between Witcher 4, 5, and 6. That means, assuming that Witcher 4 launches in 2027, the entire new trilogy of games could be released by 2033. Note, we do not know when The Witcher 4 will launch. The only concrete date-related information that we have is the game will not be released in 2026. As I understand it, they're also not going to be featuring anything at the Games Awards coming up this week. That's mildly disappointing. Now then, this goes down through the investor call about being in the prep, that they're in production phase and everything. And they said one of the biggest challenges for this trilogy is transitioning to Unreal Engine 5. And this is after they were using their own engine for Witcher 2 and 3. And let's see, down here to the point, it says, to return to the question, the headline, can they release 3 games in 6 years? We haven't seen another RPG studio do a similar thing since BioWare released Mass Effect Trilogy in 5 years. And these projects tend to suffer delays. And they closed the article by saying, to believe CD Projekt Red can suddenly narrow the gap to 3 years between games is a leap of faith to me. To me, this really depends on how they want to focus this. Moving to Unreal Engine 5 is a wild card. Expedition 33 was run on Unreal Engine 5, and as near as I can tell from my playtime, it has run flawlessly. But Borderlands 4 was also released on Unreal Engine 5, and it had a lot of technical problems. So it really is going to depend on how well CD Projekt Red locks down their experience in their coding with the engine. That's one thing. And, obviously, delays would kick back the whole timeline. I'm old and grizzled enough to remember a time when games would come out on a shorter development cycle. And is this possible they can do this? Sure. What I hope doesn't happen does not mean that they're going to sacrifice quality of the game for a stepped up production. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be technical quality. They can iron all the bugs out and get Witcher 4 working perfectly. Unreal Engine 5, it has no errors and it runs smoothly and everything. But then when Witcher 5 comes out, it's basically a carbon copy of the last one. They just kind of did palette swaps on monsters and quests and things, and otherwise it's about the same. That's not a terrible thing, but it will become quickly rather boring, and I think that will hurt them in the long run too, because the creative energy in the series will die. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just thought it's interesting that if you are a fan of RPGs or The Witcher, we're looking at a possibility of having, 3 games in like a 6-year run. And if that happened and they were great, it'd be a good time to be a gamer. I want to highlight what I consider to be a good news story. This article from IGN that was published on Tuesday, December 2nd. Helldivers 2 dev worked with Sony Studio Nixes to create a slim version for PC that reduces file size from 154 gigabytes to 23. Helldivers developer Arrowhead has created a slim version of its third-person shooter that massively reduces its file sizes. For some time now, PC gamers have complained about Helldivers 2 bloated installation. Arrowhead recently outlined versions to bring closer to the console version, the size of the console version. In a post on Steam, Arrowhead said it had worked with Sony-owned PC port specialist Nixes to reach its goal, reducing the PC installation size by 85%, saving 131 gigabytes. They said they've rolled out this slim version as part of a public technical beta, which PC players can opt into. They get into some of the technical issues. Some of it has to do with load times from, say, solid-state drives versus old, mechanical platter drives, and they're trying to work through a couple of things there. But it seems like it's going smoothly so far. Once the beta confirms no issues, Arrowhead will roll out the slim version of Helldivers 2 to all players and make it the default version for everyone. Like I said, I consider this to be a good news story, mostly because Helldivers or Arrowhead Studio did not have to do this. They could have left the game the way it was, but they did it based on the feedback of their players because they wanted their players to have a better gaming experience. And God damn it, we really need more of that in this industry. There are some studios that are doing it, but too many don't. And I think it should be the standard, not the exception, for studios to listen to their customers. We're at a time right now where everything is getting more expensive. And I know that, unlike RAM, which just shot through the roof, storage is still not super expensive, but it's a cost. And if you can save 100 gigabytes in a game and still run as well, why wouldn't you? And, we're in an era where games are routinely pushing above 100 gigabytes and reducing Helldivers 2 to sub 25. That just makes it even more impressive and more of an awesome product. So good on them. Good on Arrowhead for doing this. And I hope that they work out. I'm sure there's going to be some technical issues. I hope they work them out and this rolls out and it's just going to be better for everybody that plays the game. Next is this Insider Gaming article from Friday the 5th of December. Tim Cain returns to Obsidian for new project. Legendary game developer Tim Cain has returned to the gaming industry spotlight to team up with Obsidian. They've confirmed they've got a new game working already. If you didn't know, Tim Cain helped mastermind the Fallout franchise and co-directed The Outer Worlds, among other work. The developer semi-retired several years ago, but announced he's back in the swing of things with Obsidian and developing a mystery game. On December 5th, Cain on Games Update on his YouTube channel, he discussed what was happening regarding game development. He says, I'm back at Obsidian. I'm there, full-time employee and in person, so not remote. I'm not a contractor anymore. And then down here, he says, I also can't talk about the project I'm working on at Obsidian just because that's covered under NDA. Don't bother guessing. You're not going to get it right. And, it's got a link in the article. It's got a link to the video there. So this is interesting considering the work he's done on some pretty big RPGs over the years. He says we're not going to get it right. To go down in the comments and tell me what you think he's working on. I've heard people speculate that they are working on Fallout New Vegas 2 or a sequel to that game. I think that's too obvious. And I mean, it's possible. Obsidian and Bethesda are now both under the Microsoft umbrella. So the fact that, sharing the IP is less thorny, even though the show is kind of doing as best as it can to erase some of the continuity from Fallout New Vegas. But I don't want to get into that now. I'll be real interested to see when they come to season 2 and how they handle visiting New Vegas. But again, I don't want to get into that. That seems too easy. And I wonder if I had to put my money down on something, I think he is probably going to be working on an Avowed sequel. That's where I think they're going to go with this. And my second guess would be a totally new IP. I don't think he's going to be working on Outer Worlds. I doubt it's going to be a Fallout New Vegas sequel. And I don't think he'd be back on board if they're remastering Fallout New Vegas. I don't think Obsidian would be tasked with that anyway. So anyway, if you have a comment, let me know what you think down below, what he might be working on. And, we'll see. We'll see in time who's proven right. Next, we have this GameSpot article from Friday the 5th of December. This Game Awards teaser just keeps getting more and more puzzling. What is Jeff Keighley teasing? The Game Awards are coming up soon, and host and organizer Jeff Keighley is hyping the event with some kind of real-world teaser campaign for something people believe is connected to Diablo, specifically Diablo 4. Some think it's for the next God of War, and others think Elder Scrolls 6. All of these suggestions may be wrong. And so Keeley posted this back on November 28th. This monolith that's out in the desert was followed up by this picture, which shows the location on Google Maps, and people have driven out there, and there it is, and out in the California desert, and more pictures, and then there it is lit up at night. This has been followed up by a lot of discussion from some talking heads, saying, some people saying it definitely is not Diablo 4, it's not Elder Scrolls 6 or Elder Scrolls Online, it's not God of War. But the truth is, we don't know yet, and we really won't know. And then, of course, you have, as you go through the article, you have Devolver Digital being the trolls that they are, saying if no one else is going to claim this thing, we will. We made it out of the bones of most of our interns, and the remaining interns put it in the desert. So the Game Awards are coming up this Thursday on the 11th. I'm going to be watching them, hopefully live streaming them if I can get it to work out. So feel free to tune in and check that out, and we'll find out then. You know, the cynic in me says whatever it is, it's going to be disappointed, but it's something different. At least it's a little bit more clever. You know, last year at the Game Awards, they teased, or this year I should say, no, I'm sorry, that was the Summer Games Fest. This year, they did tease the Resident Evil 9 trailer, and they kind of trolled people by saying it'll come up in a little while. We'll be able to show you more, and most people assumed that would mean it would be later, and it just meant like 30 minutes later in the show. So they're getting a little more creative with their teasers here. So maybe it'll be something, maybe not, but we'll find out on Thursday. You know, I don't think I even really need to read this article to give you the gist of it. The headline alone tells you everything you need to know. This comes from Games Radar from Wednesday, the 3rd of December. Amazon's Tomb Raider series is suddenly a huge deal as it promises to reinvent the franchise on a massive scale and connect to the games in a unified storytelling universe. Anytime somebody says to me they're going to reinvent a franchise completely, they're going to fuck it up. That's all they're telling you up front. Now, Amazon has a mixed history with adopting outside IPs for their series. They did a good job with the first season of Fallout. The first couple of seasons of The Boys was pretty good, though it just kind of descended into parody by the end, by the last season. And Reacher, the first couple of seasons, I think 2 seasons, were good of Reacher. On the other hand, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power was atrocious. Wheel of Time was atrocious. So they have bombed on some big franchises that they've thrown a lot of money at. Nobody that I've seen involved with this so far that's confirmed to be involved with it fills me with any confidence. The animated series was absolutely stupid. Sophie Turner to play Lara Croft. You may know her from Sansa Stark from Game of Thrones. I don't think she's the right fit for the role. And before you come at me and say it's because she doesn't have a big chest, it's not specifically that. It's more that I don't think she can project the right mixture of whimsy and gravitas, the playful and serious nature of Lara Croft. I don't think she can do it. I don't think her range is that good. So nothing fills me with this. About this fills me with any confidence. You know, as the kids today say, rip bozo. I think it's where we're at with Tomb Raider. There's a game in development. It's been in development for 3 or 4 years with no news in sight. I'm glad we have the old games. That's something at least. Okay, I want to end on a high note, so we're going to wrap up with this article from Dual Shockers that was published on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. Ball Axe Pit celebrates 1 million copies sold with new content announcement. The game is off to a tremendous start as publisher Devolver Digital just announced the game has sold over 1 million units, and they're celebrating with a ton of new content in 2026. And it comes down here and it shows that the game has got 3 major content updates scheduled for next year. They'll be releasing more information in the future. And it says this genre blending game is undoubtedly one of the shining indie gems released this year as gamers hurl balls at hordes of enemies, attempt to rebuild New Balbalon, and claim the pit's ultimate prizes. Now, you know me, you know I love indie games, you know I love to see it. Here we have a game that doesn't have the flashiest graphics. You can't see the beads of sweat on people's eyebrows or look a million miles into the view distance. But what it does have is it has a gameplay loop that people are loving. 1 million units. And I looked it up. This game released on October 15th, so it's not even 2 months in, and it sold 1 million units, and enough that it's doing so well they're getting more content added. I love it. I think you should love it too. I really I can't talk about how much I appreciate the indie gaming space these days. So if you enjoy indie games, go check this one out. Give them some love. If you think it's something you're gonna enjoy, screw it. I'm gonna go buy it. I want to support these folks, so I at least go give it a look. But congratulations to them, and you know, another indie success story in a time when AAA is faltering, and it warms my cold black dead heart. Okay, I think I'm done for the night talking about game news. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please consider leaving a like on the video. I would love to earn your subscription and would appreciate if you did that. Leave a comment down below if you think I missed any major game news this week. Also, if you've got an opinion on what Tim Cain might be working on over at Obsidian, if you can smell what he's got cooking, I'd love to hear that. The Game Awards are coming up this week on Thursday. I'm going to try and live stream them if everything works out. If not, I'll still be watching. I made predictions when they announced their nominees the other week. I'll post a link to that video down below so you can see who I thought was going to win. Not necessarily who I want to win, but who I think is going to win. I'll put that link down there. I'm also in the middle of a Let's Play, doing a playthrough on the game Stray. I haven't been able to get back to it for the last week, but I need to do that, and I'm going to try and get back to that too. I'll also link that if you want to go or watch me run around as an adorable little kitty. If those aren't your taste, I will be back next week with more gaming news, and hopefully you'll tune in then. All right, like I said, I'm going to call it here. Thank you once again for watching. You all go out there, live your best lives, and y'all stay gaming.